We are here this afternoon to remember and memorialize a dear and generous life. We come together to say goodbye to Raymond Trevino Jr. My name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, and we welcome you to our sanctuary. Raymond was a beloved son, partner, brother, uncle, and friend. And today we are not walking alone in our grief and loss. We are bearing it together. But we have also gathered to celebrate a life. We have come together to give thanks that we knew this amazing man, to express gratitude for the days and years we were able to share with him. We are here to share the joy that Raymond brought to our lives with his laughter and his love of music, his passion for performing, for travel, for coffee and fine crystal and skincare products, his ability to comfort and take care of people, his love of life, and that amazing smile. My favorite line from his obituary is that Raymond could fit in an East Texas honky-tonk or high tea at Harrod's. So we are doing all these things today, grieving and celebrating, comforting and crying, feeling sad and feeling grateful. I thank you for being here today. And I also welcome those of you watching from home on our live stream. Raymond occasionally attended services here at the Meetinghouse, and the way that we as Unitarian Universalists begin each service is by lighting the flaming chalice, symbol of hospitality, service, and faith. So at this time, I invite Raymond's dear friend Paige to light our chalice. The poet John O'Donohue writes, "Though we need to weep at your loss, you dwell in that safe place in our hearts, where no storm or night or pain can reach you. Your love was like the dawn, brightening over our lives, awakening beneath the dark a further adventure of color. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. Whatever you enfolded in your gaze quickened in the joy of its being. You placed smiles like flowers on the altar of the heart. Your mind always sparkled with wonder at things. Though your days here were brief, your spirit was live, awake, complete. We look toward each other, no longer from the old distance of our names. Now you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, as close to us as we are to ourselves. Though we cannot see you with outward eyes, we know our soul's gaze is upon your face, smiling back at us from within everything to which we bring our best refinement. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence, beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring. May this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love until we see your beautiful face again in that land where there is no more separation. where all tears will be wiped from our mind, and where we will never lose you again. At this time, I invite forward Kristen Ventresca to share her remembrances of Raymond.
Hi. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kristen. And Raymond was my dear friend for almost 40 years. And I loved him dearly. So, Raymond was a constant source of joy in my life. He was truly the most joyful person I've ever met. Something as simple as going to the grocery store would somehow morph into some fabulous, ridiculous outing, leaving us doubled over laughing. I moved in with Raymond, when I was 21, and he was not yet 30. We fancied ourselves pretty young things, but we were really more Lucy and Ethel, if we're honest. I have one vivid memory from this time. Raymond was trying to cheer me up over some calamity or other, and he was dancing and singing to one of his Carmen Miranda records. I was in the shower at the time, and he shouts, "Girl, whenever I'm feeling down, I listen to Carmen Miranda." Like, who doesn't, right? So it was a frigid winter day, but I can see Raymond clearly, wearing the shortest paisley silk robe and size 13 hound dog slippers. Those hound dogs themselves were wearing tiny sombreros. He loved those slippers. It was 6 a.m, and Raymond was twirling around outside the glass shower door singing the classic, "Ya, ya, 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 I like you very much." I can't sing it, obviously. I did cheer up. How could you not? Raymond was a constant in my life over the years, even when he was off gallivanting, God knows where, doing God knows what. We were always in touch. He was family. Raymond enjoyed freakishly good health for most of his life. But as some of you know, he had several surgeries in the last couple years, 2 of them brain surgeries, a fact I secretly think he loved telling people. After his surgeries, he'd recover with Rudy and I at my house, and I have to say he was just the easiest patient. No complaining, no pain or anxiety that you'd expect from someone going through something so incredibly invasive. It was much more like a pajama party, though I'm reading this and I realize he never wore pajamas. So, was eating, reminiscing, watching old movies. All I needed to do was inspect, clean, and redress his incision. He liked it wound turban style, which he finished in a beautiful antique brooch. That was my mother's. He had a major post-surgery medication regimen, and I was very strict. Here I got pushback. I didn't think alcohol belonged on the medication list. After his first brain surgery, fast forward a few days, he was doing great. I went back to work, come home from work. Rudy and Raymond are sitting on the couch having Manhattans. Raymond looked at me, pointed at Rudy, and said, "I like this nurse way better than I like you." From then on, every call or text, he would inquire, "Is Nurse Rudy on duty?" I was like, That was yesterday's news. So, Raymond was hilarious and outlandish, but there was so much more to him than his antics. He had such a keen intellect. He was classically educated and well-read, and he was so very, very kind. Raymond was probably the only person I know who lived his life exactly the way he wanted. His life ended way too soon, but it was a life well lived. His legacy lies in his multitude of friends and in our memories of his hilarity, his kindness, and his love. So, I love you, my darling man. I only wish we could have one more martini together, the way you like to order them. I'll have your best gin, straight up, ice cold, with just a whisper of vermouth. Love you, Raymond. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. I invite Ron Cameron up to share remembrances.
Than you think when you get up here. Okay, Raymond Trevino is a magical person. If you know Raymond, you know. My name is Ron Cameron. Nice to meet all of you for the first time in person. I've heard most of your names over the years. Here and there by overhearing phone conversations or him telling little stories and me piecing things together and going, now, is that so-and-so? And is that, yeah, no, that's over, so. Anyway, and I've only met two of his friends over the years, Gary Floyd in San Francisco and Debbie Gordon, once when I was dropping him off in Vegas to have him spend the afternoon with her and her family. So, and I don't really want to get too personal, so I'll go more towards observations of Raymond Trevino, and maybe some personal stories too. I first met Raymond in person in 2011, actually a few blocks down. After talking online for a few years, neither of us at the time really knew why we both were talking and kept in touch for years, but we kept doing it, and I found out later we both kind of knew that we wanted to meet each other, but we weren't sure exactly why, but we were friends. And let me see, it was like a casual desire. I was like, okay, yeah. And when I first came here, he told me later that he was almost going to call it off. I was driving up from Hyannis area in the rain, which is strange, in a rental car, like today. And he was going to call it off because he was like, I don't know what I want. I don't need to meet people and stuff. But he just said, for some reason, I said, okay. So we met, and the funniest thing happened. I parked in the alley behind his condo, so it was like a half block down or whatever. And I kind of roughly knew by cell phone where he was and stuff. And he came out to the alley to meet me. And there he was. I was like, oh, okay. And I came up and met him, and we hung out and just chatted, and he found out that I actually knew his friend Gary Floyd before I met him, and we were off to the races, friends for life. I guess I was okay. But years later, he confided in me that when he saw me, it gets hard, when he saw me walking up, I was just casually walking up, but he said he had a little voice in his head that just said, oh, there you are. As if we'd known each other in a past life, or maybe his entire life, and we just finally, met up for whatever reason. So he, and that was interesting. It took like 4 years for him to tell me that story, and I just thought, wow, that's kind of how I felt too. We just had a connection. So after that, he started coming out to the West Coast and staying in Las Vegas because his ex-partner John had all these credits and high roller status things for all these amazing deals at casino hotels and stuff. And he'd say like, okay, I'm going out for a week, come at least for 3 days. And it kind of became our hideaway from the world. 3 or 4 days for me, a week for him. When I wasn't there, he would do the gambling to keep the status up so that he could continue that going and stuff, and tell me about his winnings, or if he didn't, he wouldn't tell me anything. But that's primarily where we kept meeting up. It was just convenient because I guess there's an airport there, and I lived in Palm Springs, so it was just like a 3 or 4 hour drive, nice scenic drive, so I was like, sure. And that became more or less our meeting point, which was kind of exotic and mysterious, but that was what we had. So we soon became closer and closer, texting or talking on the phone anywhere from every other day, every 3 days, to sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. And that lasted for the last 10 years. And in that time of getting closer and closer, I don't think I've ever experienced the almost overwhelming amount of total devotion, unconditional love, unwavering support, and endless cheerleading for whatever I was working on with business or whatever. It just was almost overwhelming, but in the best way possible. And Raymond Trevino was gifted, and if you know Raymond, you know. He would always call me like minutes or hours after something stressful or even traumatic happened and just go, are you okay? Is everything okay? And I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, but yeah, this thing happened or whatever. Sometimes he would call minutes or hours before something stressful happened, and I'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm fine. And I started putting that together later and stuff. So Raymond's mysterious. And to say Raymond saved my life more than once would be a complete understatement. Emotionally, again, cheerleading, getting me through stressful times and things going on. He knew everybody, so he's like, I'll take care of that. I know this person. Don't worry. I know a lawyer. I know this. So he loved taking care of people, as you know, I'm sure all of you are going to attest to. And then during those times of stress and stuff, what I got to know Raymond, that I would kind of joke, but he didn't really like it. He always seemed like he was like 6'4" to me. I'm 6 foot, and he was like 5'11" or 6 foot. But for some reason, he seemed taller, so I would call him Gentle Giant because he was big, but was so gentle and tender about everything. The way he spoke, unless he was laughing loud or whatever, but the way he spoke, the way he touched things, the delicate things he liked and stuff. But when you were in need and something was happening, somebody was wronging you, he could go from Gentle Giant to like a fierce guardian lion or bull, to where you're like, okay, take care of everything. And he would, yeah, again, you probably know that. And that would amaze me. Like, I would see this other side of Raymond like, whoa, okay, thank you. So for all that, I still don't want to admit he's gone. I'm just, in the last couple months, kind of coming to the realization of that, like, wow, it really happened. Okay, going back to non-personal, Raymond Trevino was a talented person, and if you know Raymond, you know. He was a trained concert oboe player. That was his first love, and he loved to boast that I hand cut my own reeds. I made my own reeds by hand. Not many oboe players did that. I did it. So that was kind of funny, and he just loved saying that. So it was like, it is kind of interesting that, he went to the 10th degree instead of just doing something good. He just went all the way, and that's how he did a lot of stuff. And I still marvel at all the various things he excelled at or knew a lot about, even correcting grammar and stuff sometimes to be friendly and gentle. But he was, again, well-schooled and knew a little bit about almost everything. And then even sometimes I would tell him something that he didn't know, and he was fascinated that I would teach him things. And I was kind of fascinated by that too, because I got to know him as like God, this guy just knows everything about everything in the world. It's interesting. But I would give it back, and he would be humble enough to tell me and, find that fascinating or interesting. Well, and with losing him, over the last few months, I've come to realize that this is merely like one chapter closing. It's not the end. He's not just gone. It's just one chapter closing. Now I'm entered into a new chapter, which is where I get to remember all the things he taught me, all the funny little Raymonisms that made him him, and the laughter, and even like the teaching stuff. Like, he would often say, my dad always told me when working on a project or something, act like glue and stick to it. And, it sounds funny and silly, but I'm actually hearing that now when I'm having troubles, like, getting all the way through, getting something done or something. It's like, wow, that's there. He's still there. Or his favorite, always practice good mental hygiene. And that's important, and he would point out others that were having problems and stuff. And also keep a good moral compass. And so the things that sounded silly and funny at first are just like, oh yeah, of course. Well, now those are like Raymond being with me. So now in this new chapter, I get to just know him from another place. And I've already had, since 6 months ago, I've already had many odd moments where it's like, even this weekend, driving around the Cape and stuff, here's just one example. I was in Orleans, which I'd never been to Orleans, and I ended up in there, and I was trying to get a few things. I needed a Sharpie pen, and I think that's the Staples that he managed for a little while, because he told me after he handled his partner's John's estate, after he passed, he worked at Staples for a little while and managed it and stuff, but it was the most northern one or whatever. So I ended up in the Staples in Orleans, and when I'm in line at the cashier, I'm like, wait a minute. And I asked the cashier, I'm like, is this the most northern Staples? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, was there never another one? He's like, well, one in Hyannis, but this is the most northern one. I'm like, okay. So anyway, I could go on and on, but Raymond is with us forever, and he was very, very special.
Thank you, Ron. I invite Rachel to come forward and share.
Hello. My mother was Dolores Aguirre, and her and Raymond were best friends. So the two of them met in Texas during college, and eventually they both moved here to Boston. To say they were best friends is putting it mildly. They were, in fact, soulmates. So together they were unstoppable. There was always an adventure to be had and a cocktail to be enjoyed. They were the kind of friends who would stay up late laughing, always seemed to be planning something, and supported each other through the ups and the downs and the all-arounds of this life. They were wonderful cheerleaders. Every idea was a good one. Every win worth celebrating. Whatever you did, they would tell you how fabulous you were at it. Raymond was always a part of my life, a permanent fixture in our family, my Tanti. For a period, he lived on the second floor of our three-family apartment building in East Boston. And the two of them would have regular chat sessions, chatting like they hadn't seen each other in ages. There was a flight of stairs between them. One of them just had to open their door and yell up or down, "Girl, I have something to tell you." And that would get it all going. They always had something to tell one another. And because they were both great storytellers, these conversations were like having one-act plays going on in my kitchen. These two loved to travel. I am lucky to say that I saw much of the world with them. globetrotting to Paris for Christmas and the infamous visit to the Eiffel Tower. We went to the Virgin Islands, white sand beaches, and the white shorts that Raymond insisted were swimming trunks. They were, in fact, underwear, and he did wear them into the water. And then there was Tokyo, where Raymond was mistaken constantly as a sumo wrestler, and we played into it and laughed it up. We savored these new lands, and we savored all these new experiences together. And from them, I learned that when love leads, joy always follows. So I think it's quite fitting that each of them had an aneurysm, leaving us suddenly and with a very traumatic exit. I don't know that their lives were cut short because they truly lived, and they lived each and every day. And I'm sure that when he arrived at that great martini bar in the sky, she was there with a cocktail in hand, waiting for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Now Paul is going to share a few words for John Mosley.
My name is Paul Houlihan, and my partner John is still too moved by Raymond's loss, so I'll say a few words in a moment. But first I'll add a couple of words myself. Raymond was one of those people who could enter a room and take command of a room just by virtue of his effervescence and impudent wit. But at times he could also be absent-minded. Once when coming over for dinner, we said, we called you, and did you know your phone was not working? And he said, yes, she has not paid the phone bill. And, well, get her to pay it. And by the way, who are you talking about? And do you have a new roommate? He said, no. I am employing the rarely used form of the royal she, which he was slyly referring to himself as a she. So, assuming reincarnation exists, some unsuspecting newborn is about to have a whale of a big personality bestowed upon them. Now I'll say a few words for my partner, John. All great adventures have a beginning, like my first meeting with Raymond Trevino back in 1980. That special mix of personality, chemistry, intelligence, with a dash of magic made Raymond a perfect friend. He yanked me out of my shell and pulled me on the stage, kicking and sometimes screaming. We traveled the world together for over 40 years. He took me places I would never have gone without him to take the lead. We traveled to Europe many times, more times than I can count, then from Iceland to South America, and 3 times across the Atlantic by ship. Each time adding a new story to our travel memories, giving Raymond more stories to tell and more things and people for me to photograph. No one loved to be photographed more than Raymond. At last count, I have close to 1,000 images, making me, in effect, his photographic Boswell. Raymond brought joy and humor into the lives of all he met. He could strike up a conversation with anyone and call them a friend within 15 minutes. Not many are blessed with the talent and heart to bring a smile to a perfect stranger and walk away knowing he had brightened their day with a simple joke or act of kindness. Meeting Raymond was like opening your first bottle of champagne. Knowing him was like drinking it. His passing leaves the world a tad darker and sadder, but the memory of his kindness and that wonderful sense of humor will always bring a smile to my face. We should all aspire to bring a touch of such magic into the world. In his last year, Raymond was a rather blissful vagabond, a ship without anchor, searching for a port to call home. I trust now he is safely home. Goodbye, big guy, till we meet again.
Thank you, Paula and John. I invite George Howell to share a few words.
Hi there. Raymond. I've not seen. I have not seen or spoken to Raymond in, I'd say, over 10 years. I knew him as someone who was running the Coffee Connection, which started in '75. Raymond appeared a little bit after that. We were building one store after another, and I was having with Lori one child after another. 6 all in all happening at the same time as this company that was growing like crazy. And Raymond started working for us and quickly became somebody who was assisting in just about everything. Never demanding, always there to be helpful. The Coffee Connection at that time was a place I think that he really loved because it was this crazy cultural moment of the 1970s and going into the early 80s, post-hippie type world that was very free, that brought in people, young people, anywhere from going to Harvard to kids passing through in different stages of their lives, with music going from classical music to rock and roll, depending at what time of the day it was, and with indigenous art on the walls all the time, which I had been exhibiting. I think that was a culture that really related to him, and that he felt very comfortable in when he was there. He was always so easy to talk to, and we could talk about any number of those things, and often did. I didn't get to know Raymond that really well. I think feeling who he was behind this incredible being who never got angry, was always there to help, never demanding, but always enthusiastic, a plus that way, and very supporting that way as well throughout, and who, as the Coffee Connection developed, became somebody who I could always rely on, who knew the coffee in a way that I could not count on anyone else to know, who could speak about it really intelligently and take people through in their own special ways, and he always was able to connect with them so they better understood either how to make the coffee or what it was all about or whatever. He gave lessons later on in how to make espresso. People would come to the special room, and we had the espresso machines, and he'd take them from decaf to regular caffeine and how to make drinks and all the rest of it. And people who came absolutely loved him. I came to know Raymond towards the end of that when Lori and I started traveling a little bit. But actually before that, we had there was a specialty coffee association, 8,000 or 10,000 people strong, who came from all around the United States at a coffee convention. And one of the coffee farmers who had a lot of money put up this party in one of our Coffee Connections on Newberry Street at night. And he brought in this super rock and roll group that played into the night, everything from Elvis Presley to AC/DC. And there was Raymond with a ferocity I've never seen with him before, singing entirely, as loud as they were, and just totally taking over, and really being the heart of that party through that night. Along, I have to say, with my mother-in-law in her 60s, who was doing similarly. They got along very well. So, and then later, towards the end, I remember, and Lori does too, going to Guatemala and being with Raymond, going through Antigua, and really enjoying looking at the sights and relating to that, going to a place where I was picking a ring for Lori to wear, a beautiful jade ring, and Raymond was going through every ring imaginable and picked up this huge ring that he really fell in love with at the time. And then we went to this amazing place in the jungle of Guatemala, Tikal, right, where you have these pyramids that soar, 2 pyramids that soar over the tree line, which are huge. And we found the way to climb up to the top, which was absolutely glorious. You had to be careful there, and we were warned because of the serpents that were not only on the branches that could land on you and could kill you, but also the ones on the ground that could be like coral snakes, about 12 inches, 13 inches in length, and they could kill you within a few minutes or whatever. And guess what Raymond was wearing? Flip-flops, right? So that's the Raymond I knew. I wish I had known more. I just know that he was a spirit that was always there of helpfulness. And one at a time in my life, with a new business that I was doing, which became wholesale, not the cafes, not that culture or whatever, he appeared and said, "Can I help?" and whatever. That was not something that was there, that culture wasn't there, and he just quietly left and came into his own life here. The last 11 years that I did not know, but often thought about him. He touched me. Thank you.
Thank you, George. There are many other friends who could not be here today and family who wish to share remembrances and readings. So I invite Paige to come up and share some words from friends and family.
Thank you, Reverend Kate. I'm Paige Garrison, and I met Raymond in 1974 when he came to the University of Texas at age 17 to visit my college roommate. Within a couple of hours, we were kindred spirits. And after 44 years of close friendship, Raymond was the only person in my life who knew my parents, my sisters, all my exes who live in Texas, and every other girlfriend I had. I'll save my stories for the reception. I'm here to represent the many friends and his family who cannot be here but are hopefully watching the broadcast. Raymond loved his family in Texas dearly. His sister Cecile, brother-in-law Tony, and nieces Dana and Cassie and their children. Dana writes, he would always start our conversations together by saying, "My darling Dana." I cherished these conversations, but I knew I always had to keep my grammar in check because he would instantly correct my improper verb tense or improper sentence structure. He's probably in heaven right now critiquing this letter, But that's what I loved and will miss greatly about my Uncle Junior. Uncle Junior was loving, handsome, nurturing, knowledgeable, caring, and very proud of his Mexican heritage. And I don't think he ever knew how excited we would get when Uncle Tio Ray Ray was coming home to visit. Lots of precious memories with Uncle Junior, such as Uncle Junior would take me to Neiman Marcus for a spontaneous haircut and style during the middle of a shopping spree. He insisted, and I remember traveling with him to a Provincetown beach where we applied hot pink zinc sunscreen on our faces as we boy-watched for the cutest guys on the beach. Junior was also very involved in Sierra and Ava's academics and would always offer to edit their English papers or essays for college and scholarship applications. Junior, I will miss hearing your northern accent, even though you were a true Southern boy at heart. I will miss your strong, tight hugs and our spontaneous phone calls. I will always love you. When I think of the many dear friends of Raymond, they have two key qualities. He was attracted to extremely intelligent people who were also very fun to be with. His old friends send these remembrances. From Robin Latimer. Raymond was a lifelong friend and fellow Port Arthurian intellectual loved by my family as I was by his. We shared a love of poetry and had an array of common friends, many artistic, and we rolled in his 1970s Thunderbird everywhere imaginable. He knew me through and through and always made me feel loved. Raymond loved to talk and was a great conversationalist, but ultimately he was very attuned to natural beauty and loved silence and solitude. This poem by Rosario Castellano reminded me of sitting across from Raymond, sometimes when his mind drifted to the world of the non-linguistic. Talk. Because reality is reducible ultimately to signs and is pronounced in only one word. The other smiles and sips from a glass, watches the passage of tall midday clouds, and feels bothered. Bougainvillea, jasmine, roses, dahlias, geraniums, flowers of which each petal is speaking, a syllable of color and fragrance, by a garden of inexhaustible language. Raymond met his lifelong friend Richard Fletcher in a junior high school play when they were cast in The Outcast of Poker Flats. Little did they know then that they would navigate over 50 years of shared experience, including coming out, the loss of parents and friends, some memorable trips together, as well as the ups and downs of life as gay men in their 50s and 60s. Phone calls began with the phrase, "Girl, you can take the trash out of Port Arthur, but you can't take Port Arthur out of the trash," and ended with, "I love you to pieces." Here's a brief recollection of Raymond from Rich in a poem about self-revelation and the breadth and depth of our lived experience. Love after love. The time will come when with elation you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. From James Funston. His was a rich soul, with an active mind and open heart. And so shall journey on. I'm grateful for his life, our time, and my memories of him. I'm sure I join with you all in such gratitude. I share this benediction, first offered by Reverend Pomeroy, a UU minister. Let us take much of love into the struggles of life. And when the recall sounds and the shadows fall, may we have hearts unembittered by all we have suffered and uncorrupted by all we have enjoyed, and be at last remembered and cherished as those who have loved greatly. Carlotta Chartier Coates, a Coffee Connection friend living in Uruguay. Who else would suggest you go looking for eligible lesbians on an open market Sunday morning in Montevideo, Uruguay? If you're a single 60-something dyke living in a country of 3.5 million people isolated on a farm, only one person, Raymond. To me, he was home, acceptance, sexuality, rabid friendship, humor, and warmth. He saw me clearly, but most importantly, he showed me the possibility of me without fear of judgment or rejection. I am blessed for having been part of his life. Catherine Koiser, college friend at the University of Texas. I've lost a huckleberry friend. I met Raymond Trevino at 20 when he moved into Stonehenge, the Bohemian Co-op, in a grand, derelict Queen Anne I called home at UT Austin. An accomplished oboist, poet, and classicist, Raymond had the kind of resonant baritone and perfect diction that would have done a stage actor proud. He also had worlds of charm, a bawdy sense of humor, and an appetite for pleasure in the material world. Raymond and I hooked immediately. I think the deal was shared by a shared history at a generation's remove. He happened to grow up in my mom's hometown of Port Arthur, Texas, attending the same high school where she'd been a student and my grandmother was the formidable chair of the English department. Raymond soon called me CQ and has been part of my life ever since. For years, I watched Raymond make reeds for his oboe, play beautiful Baroque music with perfect embouchure, cook up mean Tex-Mex food, completely overshadow the sales of his full-time colleagues at a part-timer in the Neiman Marcus homewares department, deliver expert lectures on skincare, become a coffee connoisseur and entrepreneur, build a rich life and community in Provincetown, and travel the world visiting me in Burma. What never changed was his big, big heart that loved and held close so many dear friends. I'm lucky to have been one of those. And finally, Raymond's niece, Cassie. Junior was very special to us. He was always emailing, calling, or sending a quick text. Growing up, when I was little, he would set me on a beach towel in the middle of my parents' living room and paint my nails bright red. He loved going to get pedicures with us. Junior took me on a trip to Paris that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. He loved coming to Texas and often gifted us with cosmetics or fancy popcorn from Neiman's. We so enjoyed hearing about his travels around the world and stories of his precious friends who he loved so much. Junior, as you would say, we love you to pieces and miss you so much. Your memory will live on forever.
Thank you, Paige. Now let us remember Raymond through some pictures. Thank you so much for those special words and remembrances and for that wonderful slideshow. We know that all of you gathered here have special memories with Raymond, things you've learned from him, things you'll miss about him. Community was incredibly important to Raymond. So to honor that at this time, if there's anyone else who'd like to say just a very short word or two about Raymond, I invite you to come to the front of the sanctuary and share a thought. If there's no one, that's fine too.
I'll just tell one story. He was in Texas visiting his family, and Raymond was often say bizarre and funny things that were just outrageously entertaining. And once he said, "You know, I wish I had some." With his family there, he said, "I wish I had some pom-poms so I could really celebrate this occasion." And it turns out his nieces were cheerleaders and actually had some pom-poms. And so he ended up, they ran to their rooms and got the pom-poms. And so he had to do to back up his claim, he had to do a impromptu performance with pom-poms. And I can just imagine how entertaining that was.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to share? Okay. Maybe you need a drink or two to let the stories roll, right? That is actually the plan for what's next. To continue the celebration of Raymond's life, we would like to invite you to a reception down the street at the Harbor Lounge, and there you can continue to share stories and remembrances and raise a glass to Raymond. We cherish the memory of Raymond's words and deeds and character. Carrying him in our hearts, let us go now from this place in comfort and in peace, assured that even in this time of loss and sorrow, life remains precious and good. May we also on this day rekindle in our hearts an appreciation for the gifts and life of all of our family and friends. As you return to the routines of your lives, may an abiding peace go with you. Amen.